For our next speaker, I had to get a shot of espresso because Hayden has so much energy, so I had to at least get to half your level, Hayden, okay? All right, so I have the pleasure of welcoming our second speaker, this is the second time here coming to visit us, Hayden Shaw. He's a generational guru, right? He has presented in over 1,500 presentations he's done around the country and probably around the world. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Hayden Shaw.
Thank you for having me back. And when I was talking to your leaders last fall, we were, and welcome back those of you who heard that presentation. There'll be many of the same jokes. So feel free to get out your phones and do other work. I don't have any conscious bias against people who are like, dude, I've heard this story before, because I have 4 children and I don't even get halfway through a story the first time before they pull out their phones and start doing more interesting things. Is that right? Nothing says, Dad, you're really not that interesting, but I do need some money, like your own children talking to other more interesting people while you're talking to them. And so I don't have a bias against that. You do what you need to do. Why is generations a topic in a large organization that has had a long history? Because you're not going anywhere, because people still need power. Does this make sense? So you may be in a next era, but there's still some Florida power and light in there, isn't it? There's still people down around here that need some power even after the wind blows hard today. And that may be me. I'm supposed to go work in the Bronx tomorrow, but if that wind keeps going, I may need power in the airport all night long. Does this make sense? Yeah, and I know you had a drought, but enough's enough. When you're done watering the plants, you turn off the spigot, do you not? That's what I was hearing on the way in today, is this was great. We needed some rain, and boy, we probably asked a little too hard for this. And so that makes sense. Now let's talk some of the key themes that we talked about earlier when we had a little bit more time for that. So let me distill what I think are some of the biggest deals around generations. First, what do we do with these millennials? What do we do with them? Because they're not like us. Remember Sesame Street? One of these things is not like the others. Pick one of the 4 generational boxes that thinks differently. Now, Xers, you were different. Fortune magazine had a cover of you in a tie-dyed shirt, and you wanted to bring your dog to work. And when a big company came to the business school for recruiting, your school bribed you to go because you wanted to be entrepreneurs and work for the startup company. And then you came to work, and there were so many of them and so few of you that you made major changes in the dress code. You got it to Dockers. Right? Guys got it to Dockers. You could get away from dress pants and you could get into the dungarees. You couldn't do jeans. But Xer women, you were able to get it to the peep toes. Anybody remember back in the early 80s when men wore suits and women wore bigger suits? It was about the kind of shoulders. You basically look like a vampire. The guy in front of me was watching a Chinese vampire movie, and you look like a vampire in those kind of shoulder pad things, right? The bigger the shoulder pads, the bigger the status. I think women were going for height 1 inch of padding at a time. Either that or they were really hoping to get a front line position on some football team. And so we will just out-guy the guys. And women brought us the shoulder padless jacket and the peep toe. Now, I had the head of HR in the Hilton Biltmore in Arizona say to me, we have moved to we want the peep toe at the Hilton. They require pumps. I said, what is a peep toe? I had to go home and ask my wife, what is a peep toe? So I don't have unconscious bias. I'm just unconscious about what a peep toe is. Does that make sense? What is a peep toe? It's a pump where the big toe. Suddenly things make sense. When my wife and daughter have only one toe painted, they were in a hurry, but it's summer, so they planned on the peep toe. You don't have to burn a lot of time. She said, here's our goal. Our goal is to get one toe at a time. There's so many of them and so few of us, and our goal at the Hilton as Xers is to get one toe and then go from there. Start with one and then work our way into sandals. Xers, when you came in, you were different, and yet you needed to eat. And you preferred it indoors. And then you had children. And so they owned you. So I'm in Costa Rica in the largest bank. The executive team said, what do we do to keep younger generations from leaving? And I was probably too succinct in my answer. Thinking about banking and mortgage and the research on turnover, I simply said, you need to get them pregnant. To which the director of HR in the back of the room threw up her hands. I said, oh, my bad. I didn't mean you personally. I mean that the research shows that when people have a mortgage and some kiddos, they don't go anywhere. How many of you have toddlers? How many of you have tried to go somewhere? By the time you take to quote the really bad Batman, right? The one with Jack Nicholson, right? The toys. Oh, the toys. The toys my 2-month-old grandbaby has today. The detachable stroller. It's a beautiful thing. You just pop that kid out. That kid never leaves her car seat. They just put her into her bed system. It's great. She never leaves her car seat. It is a beautiful thing, right? And a stroller that costs more than my first car because it's made out of materials. I was at NASA and said, there are materials here you can't afford to do on a space shuttle. Yes, astronaut lives matter, but we can't afford that. But we've got in a jogging stroller with a cup holder. Because this is a beautiful thing. Does this make sense? The toys are amazing, but by the time you carry all that stuff out to the car, there's 17 trips. It is easier to just stay home, is it not? And you promise yourself, we're still going to do stuff when we have kids. And the first one you do, because you tag team hauling the stuff out of the car. By the second kid, you're like, I'm sitting right here, and I'm not leaving until I have to go to work again. And then someone says, hey, do you want to move for a job? No. How many of you have junior hires, middle schoolers? How many of you want to be hated until you pay for a lot of therapy? In later years. That's what happens if you move in junior high. I'm in love. We have been hanging out together for 3 weeks. This is I gave him the best 3 weeks of my life, and you're making me move. If you would have just waited another half a week, they would have been broken up. But because you moved before that 3.5 weeks came up, you will be hated until 30s. I want to go to therapy and talk to you about how you broke my heart in junior high because of your stupid career. Now, the irony is, when we get older, we don't move much. Baby boomers had 9 jobs before they were 32. And then after that, they don't have as many jobs because they gotta move. I'm gonna, whatever. And then you get to be a manager and you have less incentive to move, right? I don't know why these people aren't loyal. Because you're the boss guy going, no, I did this, right? Like the video, I did this. And they're going, yeah, but that was my idea that you didn't hear. Just like the video that showed us. That was my idea. Yeah, whatever. Well, no wonder you stay. You're a water walker. When you go like this, they're like, I'm writing that down. I'm telling that to my kids. My boss went, you got incentives to stay. More than that, many of us, when we move into management, are older. And so we got kiddos, or especially bigger kiddos, who tell us they hate us and then go to their room and cry. And so we're less likely to move. We're at a stage in life where we say, whatever. He's exactly right. Yeah, whatever. Hey, I got this great opportunity. Here's what my wife said. I had a client that said, wouldn't you like to come off the road? No, not really. I like what I do. Yeah, but we can offer you, we'll even give you stock options if you want this job. I said, no, we just built a house. He said, ask your wife. First of all, that is so Xer. Boomers would never have said, ask your wife. To boomers, they would have said, well, okay, we're only going to ask 3 times. And then you will never get asked again. And the third one might be Boise. So you better take this one down. For Xers, it's, well, why don't you call home? The assumption is that you would have to call home. Boomers would have been assumed that you would take the job and then call home and explain where you're moving. Right? The fact that he even said to me, talk to your wife. I talked to her. I said, hey, I got to get back to Tim. I told him, no way. She said, well, baby, if you want to live up there all week long and then just drive home on weekends, we could do that. If that really, whatever you want to do, if you want to get off the road, different world, we're not going anywhere. How about this? I'm at a big aerospace place, and they said to me, the VP said to me, we are amazed at how much a brand new minted engineering grad, because of internships, because of some of the technology they get to use now, how quickly they move into projects and actually add value. They actually hit the ground running faster than we did. I said, well, how come then they have to sit at the card table at Thanksgiving for about 7 years to pay their dues until they're invited up to the big table, of which they're told by people who do give them coaching, you need to shut up unless spoken to, and after that, you just need to say yes. You can tell me all the things you think need to change here, but you have to sit here at the big table quietly for about 3 years before you can actually answer a question that is directed to you. Now what? You're saying that if a question is directed to me, I should not answer it. That's right. They're just testing you to see if you know your place at the big table, to see if you have the right definition of respect. Am I missing anything? No, and it's not. It's because that's what happened to us, isn't it? We're not bad people. We are just doing unto others what happened to us. So yesterday I'm on the phone with the hospital. They said, here's our challenge. Our older nurses resent our younger nurses. I said, that's because your younger nurses don't want to work every holiday. They said, that's right. And your older nurses say, I had to work every holiday. If I had to work every holiday. And they always do it with this twitchy face, don't they? If I had to do it. Suddenly we get palsy when we are talking about the things we didn't like in our past. I had to do it, so you're going to have to do it. Well, then I'll quit. That's because you don't care about patients. Well, if you cared about patients, why don't you work Thanksgiving? I already had to work Thanksgiving when I was 20. People in their 20s work Thanksgiving. Why? Did I not mention that's what I had to do? And if I had to do it and you don't have to do it, then the universe is not fair and I'm going to die bitter. That's in essence what we're saying. Turn to the person next to you. Turn to the person next to you. Look them in the eye and give them this business coaching. You ready? Look them in the eye. Unclench. Some of us clench our teeth. Our dentist is always on us for that. Some of us clench elsewhere. Wherever you clench. To quote the Disney film Frozen. Let it go. Now, here's the irony. When it comes to our own children, we're like, all right, now here's what you got to do, because they're going to want you to sit at the card table. And here's the end run on the card table. And then when they tell us what happens in their job, we're like, So we live in these two worlds with our slow brain and our fast brain. And when it comes to our kids, our fast brain goes, you're doing that stuff to my kid that you did to me? I will cut you. And then when we come to work, we're like, who do you think you are? You sit back down at that card table until we tell you to come up. Isn't this funny? No, not so much. Not so much. It isn't. Friday night, I filmed a series of videos on how do you cut your generational turnover in half quickly. And you can't cut all turnover quickly, but you can cut generational turnover in half if we just raise our generational IQ. Raise our generational IQ. If we have a process that's repeatable. Nobody wants to hire consultants every time they run into a generational challenge. We need a process that will help people about 80% of the time figure it out. And then every so often you need to customize a plan to the needs of your organization. Those simple three things. So they say easy, don't they? Take this, for example, talk about say easy. Just 3 weeks ago, this big report came out. Millennials aren't any different than any other generation. They want regular promotions and regular raises. And then they won't leave their organization. They plan to stay just like any other generation. Did you know that shorter people fit into small compact cars better than bigger people? Did you know that? They may have to talk more authoritatively in a presentation, as we learned in the last session, but they can roll right up into a compact Subaru, no problem. And last night, I was just happy to get a car when we landed in Tampa rather than Fort Lauderdale. And so I said, what else you got? Give me what is undesirable, because there's a lot of people in line who don't travel all the time and they'll be picky. He said, well, we have a subcompact. And he looked at me and said, you can't fit. Which made sense. I felt very biased. And I thanked him for his accuracy. Does that make sense? See, so much of what we talk about in the research may be true, but it's not that helpful. If you're a manager, I have to give them constant raises and constant promotions. Well, talk about career advice. Hey, boss, how do I get ahead? This one woman in Pittsburgh, she was head of HR. She said, every time our new millennials ask for their career path, I change the topic or fake an aneurysm. This is a direct quote. She said, I don't know what to tell them. And when I do talk about the fact that I don't have any answers, they leave within 6 months. Well, first of all, that's not true that they do. And secondly, because that's one of our fears that doesn't usually work out that way. And here's what she said, if I knew what to do, I'd have a raise and a promotion. When organizations used to have a very clear career ladder, you could say, do these 4 things, and then you will move from level 3 to level 4 of Super Mario. But now organizations are more like that video game Myst, where you spend 3 years on this part of the island, and you come over and spend 4 years on this part of the island, and then some days you end up on that part of the island. You're not sure how you got there. And then eventually people say, you know who'd be great? I know them too. And there's no longer the same simple ladder. And so a lot of managers are like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to go forward here. And so for those of you who like a little structure, let's turn some slides, okay? In an organization that hires a lot of people with some science in their degree, anybody here analytical by nature? Kind of lean that way? And you're like, this is fun, but wow, I can't believe our leaders invited him back. If he just tells stories, he's not turned a single slide. Anybody thinking that? I have a bias against people who have slides and don't actually turn them because I keep waiting for the presentation to start. You had no idea I've covered half of what I wanted to cover. So let's roll some slides here so we can help other people feel good about coming today. All right? 4 generations for the first time in history. Why? Why do we have them for the first time? People won't die. You have relatives. They just keep going. In 1900, the age of mortality was 48. Look around this room. I'm 54. Gives whole new meaning to I see dead people. We live 30 years longer, and that is a game changer. And the cutting edge of generational research is in what the implications of 30 more years are. That's the cutting edge. Okay, we'll talk about that a little later. 4 generations of employees, 5 generations of customers. What about Generation Z? I had 4 conversations last week. What about Generation Z? Generation Z goes into college this year. They go into college this year. Aren't they in the workplace? Newspapers are talking about it all the time, magazines. First of all, nobody agrees on the name Generation Z. I think it's a mistake because that means we're out of letters and the world must end. Nobody should have picked X. That gives you no room. The next generation is now AA, and nobody wants to say that their great-grandkid is a part of AA at 2. That's just bad parenting there. That's all that is. My 2-year-old's in AA. That's just wrong. And thirdly, it creates additional tension with Europe because they say Z, we say Z. It just gets awkward with all of that. So nobody even agrees on a name yet. And most sociologists make them younger rather than starting around 23. So they're not the concern. I always have to ask that because people want to know, what's the next generation? What are my kids? Nobody agrees yet on a name. Federal government calls them Homeland because that was around for a while. Being known as the generation that had to go through a metal detector, that may not be what sticks. They may not like that any more than Generation X liked X. Can't sign your name? Put an X. Don't have an answer? Put an X. X is like, can we get another name? No, that's the one the older generation stuck you with till you die, right? I don't know that Homeland's going to go either. And while they're important, right now they're not the focus of most organizations unless they hire people who are in high school at this point. But we got 5 generations in our larger client base, customer base. These are people we care for. These are people we take care of. Hey, we've got that online. For some folks, you might as well say, we have buried the instructions to that 30 feet deep. And we will give you 4 different locations where you can guess where those are, and you just need to start digging. And if you find them in a week, call us. And we'll tell you where the next set of instructions are. Does this make sense? Yeah, and they need help. And so we've got multiple generations. Your customer service people have to be able to handle a range of folks who interact in a very different way. Well, here's the name of the book. The publisher made me put that in there. Every slide deck, it's in the contract, and I had to tattoo it on this butt cheek. It was in the contract. I thought it was awkward, but it was a tough time in 2013 to get a publisher, so it was just awkward for everybody. Historical timeline. For those of you who are analytical, by this time people are saying, what are the numbers? Traditionalists are 1901 to 1943. Many of them have retired out of energy companies by now, but every generation has a cusp. That's my mom, 40 through 45. Baby boomers. Any baby boomers in the room? Baby boomers get reluctant because, my brother lives in China. Age is very respected in China. In the U.S., youth is respected. That's the prime value of the boomers. So the boomers have trouble putting their hands up. No boomers, both. Come on, boomers, up. In front of you, last generation to get full Social Security. It's your birthday. It's your birthday. Those of us at the cusp of Generation X and the boomers, we will be licking the trough. Xers, you better hope there are a lot of millennials that stay employed for a long time, because you're going to be 87 to qualify for Social Security, are you not? All right, then we've got our Xers 65 through 81. Come on, let me see those hands. Small generation. Do you know you are small because children scared us? The entire time you weren't being born, we were scared of kids. Surveys showed that, and horror films tell us what we're scared of. The generation before was scared of the mushroom cloud. That's why we had Godzilla and Mothra usually landing in Japan to wreak havoc. Today we're scared of terrorists, so we have zombies everywhere. When the Xers were being born, from the time the birth curve started dropping under 3 million live births a year till the time it went back up and over, the entire dip for Xers, we had the horror genre of the devil baby child. Call out the movies of the devil baby child. Come on, call them out. The Exorcist, that sweet little girl could levitate and spit green soup. Her head spins around and we're like, we're not in Kansas anymore. What else? Damien, if there's a child with a 666 birthmark, a nanny is going to die. We know that story arc. What else? Give me two more and we'll move on. Hold that thought. Children of the Corn was one of the few Stephen King box office failures. Rosemary's Baby was a breakout success. Rosemary's Baby came at the beginning of the drop in the birth curve. Now, I'm not saying people saw Rosemary's Baby and went, let's not have children. We had Rosemary's Baby because traditionalist mothers told their boomer daughters, don't do what I did and have 3 kids by 23. We were scared that children would destroy our lives, and so we had films about them. Children are like spawn of Satan. Be afraid. Be very afraid. And then Stephen King flops. Now, Children of the Corn is a scary premise. You go into the corn, there's kids. They kill you. That's almost as bad as alien clowns that suck your face. That's bad. But Children of the Corn was a horribly scary premise, and nothing, because attitudes were changing. We started seeing baby on board, suction cups, and signs in the back of windows. And then there were 3 low-budget breakout films. Raising Arizona, Baby Boom, and 3 Men and a Baby that said we're now interested in babies again. Babies don't destroy your life. They are your life. And you should not be putting them in a umbrella stroller. $20 at Target. One adult has to hold the stroller open so that the dead weight of the child can keep the stroller from collapsing in and on itself. Hey, you younger parents with the $1,000 running, jogging titanium strollers, don't be haters. If you saw the buggies that we had to fold up, you had to have a station wagon because you had to take the entire stroller intact. It only folded up this much. You sliced off half your hand and it folded up this much so you could get it in your station wagon and you could go somewhere else. That's why you couldn't go anywhere, because umbrella strollers meant we could go anywhere. And we could get another kid where that one came from. Come on, that's funnier than that. Yep, that's a simple parenting technique. You got difficult teenagers, you just need to get a picture from a store. Don't change out the photo of the family, and all you got to say is, oh, that was your older sister. You can pay for therapy later. All right, Gen Xers, you're small but mighty. Small but mighty. Cuspers, 78 through 83. How many of those do we have? Look at you. Look at you. And then finally, millennials, 82 through 2003. Good people. Millennials, I don't have any Social Security to look forward to unless you work hard. So I just want to personally thank you for being here. And all the extra hours you can get, I'd ask you to do them. There are 4 approaches we take to generations. The first one is we just ignore them. I am completely unconscious to my biases. It's real simple. I don't see generational differences. I believe everybody's just like me, and rap music should not be a part of the Grammys. Because I don't listen to it. Does that make sense? Here's what my niece says. Oh, I don't, because I said, hey, Rolling Stone just released the 500 best albums of all time. She goes, yeah, it's all my dad's music. You have to be dead or almost dead before any of that makes the top 20. I couldn't help it. All I said was, well, of course, it's good. Yeah, and there'll never be a, it's just bad. It was bias. I thought, I've turned into my old man who used to say that B.J. Thomas, I'm serious, rock and roll is destroying the teenage mind. I said, that's not rock and roll. You've obviously never heard Led Zeppelin. If you think that's destroying the teenage mind, that's just 2 years away from being in elevator music. And sure enough, 2 years later, I'm humming he goes, you know this song? Yes, it was a real song 2 years ago till they kicked out the beat and turned it into elevator music. He goes, it's nice. I thought, all right, that's over. It's over. We just ignore it. We ignore it. The second thing we do is we try to fix it. Hence the picture of the dog. When your dog hears the word fixed around the house, your dog hides. Same thing you do in a love relationship. Anybody been in a long-term love relationship? Anybody been married? I did marriage counseling in a past life, so I don't assume. How many of you know the look in your beloved's eye when they want to fix something about you? Hey, you got a minute? That is not ever what you want to hear in a long-term relationship. You do not ask, hey, do you got a minute? I want to tell you that my mom was wrong and you are the single best decision I ever made in my life. They do not start with, do you have a minute? Okay? And most of us don't want feedback. As a matter of fact, one of probably the leading researcher on love relationships, John Gottman, called criticism the hydrochloric acid of love. Hey, baby, can I just spritz you with some skin-destroying mist? In the name of making things better, I would like us to slowly dissolve into a emotionless roommate situation. What? See, because people just don't do criticism well. You, how come, why? You ever say those? Those are great conversation starters, aren't they? Why is it that you, and by the way, at work, they're slightly disengaging, are they not? Yeah, after lunch, we'll talk about how do you engage people at work. And for many of us, the things that get us in a corner at home do the same thing. How much better to just not try to fix the other person? How many of you have tried to fix the person you kiss? Come on, I did. How many of you have given up in despair? Good, because after 25 years of research in marriage, successful marriages are long-term love relationships. You ready for the word that summarizes it all? The magic word of successful love relationships. You ready? Whatever. Who knew that your grandparents were right? How come he's like that? Yeah, whatever. He's cute, but whatever. How many of you have found that to be the case? Whatever. Your kids, your older kids say, he makes me crazy when he does that. Uh-huh. Why don't you stop him? Tell him. You tell him. He won't listen to me. Baby, I told him for the first 2 years. I talked about it with his mom. She says she tried. All I do is smile now and say, whatever. I love the man. It doesn't mean I don't have homicidal fantasies, but I love the man. The magic word there to damper down homicidal fantasies in a long-term love relationship is whatever. I'm going to buy a green egg. Smoked meats cause cancer. Don't care. There's no way you should pay $1,200 for a grill. It is not a grill. It is a self-contained fire unit. And it's in honor of all the World War II veterans that rediscovered them. This is how I am honoring and cooking on every military holiday. She's like, that's crazy. That's too much money. I said, you have no idea what the accessories cost. But I kept those thoughts in my head. Because the timer that allows you to sleep all the way through a brisket and just check your phone, now that makes me proud to be an American. This has nothing to do with generation. This is life stage, people. Once I hit 45, I'm not want to go into the vivid details of it, but I'm up once a night, if you know what I mean. And so I'm up about 4 anyway, just for a moment. I can look over, check the phone, see if it's broken through the 180 wall on brisket, and go back to bed. She thinks this is crazy. And I just say to her, you got to die some way. Carcinogenic wood smoke passing through my food is a beautiful way to do it. Is that not right? Here's what she says. Whatever. My daughter, who's in med school, she goes, Dad, I just don't even... You're eating lunch meat? That's worse. It'll kill you. Dad, whatever, girl, you die your way, I'll die my way. You get your inheritance faster. Why don't you back off? How many of you had discovered that whatever is the magic word of relationships? Whatever. I love you anyway. I'm not going to change you. I need to accept that as soon as I leave home, you go back to being you. If I'm gone for a week, it may take a week and a half to get you back to parity, right? Just chill. Unclench. We can't fix them. If we can't do that with the person we kiss, how are we going to do that with 86 million people? I don't know what's wrong with these millennials. I'm talking to the senior leaders in the DOD, and I said to them, you need to breathe. They're like, what? You need to breathe because they're not going to change. For the last 3 days, you've been talking about things you hope they'll eventually learn because you want them to turn into boomers. Because you know what to do if they're boomers, and they're never going to turn into boomers. You can breathe now. I just want to bring you that word of advice. They'll be themselves, and they'll learn a lot from you, and they don't want to be you. They say whatever about you, but they don't want to be you. They like the way they are. Yeah, but they don't. They're not willing to move wherever you go for wherever you are in your entire career in the military. That's right. What are we going to do? You're going to have people who give 5 years of service and then go do something else in a civilian job? Yeah, but we need people who are like you and would do whatever because you just came off of a world war with foes that were as light and dark, friend or foe, as war has ever been. And you don't think their 5 years of service counts. Well, we do. We just need 40 in complete, unthinking dedication. We had to do it because we cared. I said, that's beautiful, and they care too. But they won't stay. Thank you. I think you're describing things, but are you complaining about that? Do you need time to pout? Most of us need time to pout when we face an uncomfortable reality, do we not? Yeah, no one told me that I'd be able to grow hair out of my ears and not out of my head. That's news I could have used, people. All that stuff on health class about fat grams and pork and wood smoke, whatever. I needed to know the horrifying thing that the woman who cuts my hair says, I can't hurry, it's fast on top. But all this other accessory growth takes forever to get through now. No one warned me of that fact. I needed some time to pout about that. You with me? Unpleasant realities. You know what? Would you please turn to the person next to you? And would you look at him in the eye? Because you've already advised them that they need to unclench. Would you just reassure them that one of the best ways for us to deal with bias is to pout. Come on, turn. Just repeat after me. Feel free to pout. But not forever. Come on. Does that make sense? Oh, but I don't like that. I hate synthesizers. I like guitar-based music because most of the music I listened to was in the 70s. I went to college in the 80s. Yes, U2 was my official band because I went to college in the 80s. But I can still only take so much synthesizer music before I'm like, shut it off. Give me guitar-based music. And my son plays the synthesizer in the room above my office because I do believe in God and I believe he hates me. I know it's my bias. It's not even unconscious. I just pout. And I'm a religious person, so I go to church. And guess what's in my church? Synthesizers. It's like, in the name of God, be gone. And I'm trying to do The Exorcist, and she won't leave. The demons of synthesizers. I'm like, oh, good night. If there's a God, break her fingers. Just temporarily. Heal them after the service. But break them now. Because everything in the world should revolve around. I don't think I'm a baby. I just think I want what I want. And I need to fix everyone else in the world. You get the point, don't you? First we unclench, and then we pout, and then life can be better. This is the fourth one. There's a third approach, and the third approach is to cut a deal. To cut a deal. I had my son pick an image for this, and he found a gray tie, and it looks exactly like the tie on the cover of 50 Shades of Grey, which is generational because he's a 22-year-old guy who's not even familiar at all with the book. And I said, I think this looks like the cover of 50 Shades of Grey. I've not read it. I don't own it. But it was in the news a lot. I don't know that we can use it. I showed two other people. They went, that looks just like the tie in 50 Shades of Grey. So we had a little generational moment right there. And so now you got nothing. Because for men, we got rid of the tie, right? It was great. Ethel, what do you want to wear? Well, you might want to wear a jacket, but the magic words, don't have to wear a yes. Xers, just one piece of apparel at a time. And the Xers decided to start at the part that chokes off your ability to breathe most. Women are going for the toes and the shoulder pads. Men said, wow, I don't have to strangle myself anymore every morning. This is beautiful, okay? We got rid of the tie. Women got rid of the girdle. That was actually what started generational research, is the decline of sales of the girdle in half. Playtex called Yankelovich and said, my wife last night said she's throwing her girdles away. What do? Sales had already dropped in half. Because boomer women said, I'm not wearing a girdle. So we began to cut a deal. That's our third approach. Okay, I can't fix you. So you can wear jeans on Fridays, and on Thursdays, if you give United away, wait, we're going to need a whole new calendar. Outlook, can you give us multiple calendars so we can have one just to track what day it is so I know what the clothes are? Does this make sense? Some places have gone to all casual. People are like, I don't know, will productivity drop? Don't we work better when we have to dress up? Because what women said was no to hose, didn't they? The girdle held up hose. Because only women of a particular old occupation showed any ankle in 1900. Nothing said, come hither like an ankle on your great grandma. Yeah, that's an image that'll take therapy to get rid of. And so I lived with some people when I was an intern, and her most embarrassing moment in all of her years of school is when she was pushed into a fountain by a boy who was flirting with her and had to stay in the bathroom all day long because her legs ran. In World War II, they couldn't get stockings, and so you painted your legs and then took an eyeliner and put a stripe down the back so it looked like a seam. And that boy who was flirting with her pushed her into the fountain at the Pittsburgh Zoo. Her legs ran, and she stayed the entire field trip her sophomore year in the bathroom because she had runny legs. Good girls don't have bare legs. But we cut a deal, did we not? We said to women, you don't have to wear hose. I think the rejection to hose is because so many people wear flip-flops to work and then change in the parking lot. And the fact that you got hose is just so difficult unless you get the forked support toe hose. And that's just not attractive for any gender. It's like guys in socks and Birkenstocks. It's like, guys, stop it. Seriously, stop it. That's the third approach, is we cut a deal. The fourth approach is we lead. The first three approaches are based on trying to manage people. Leadership says you will never get all four generations right. Whatever decision you make, it will be wrong. Right? Whatever decision you make as a manager or leaders, it will be wrong. So instead, on generational things, we find people of different generations and we give them the business problem and we let them come back with ideas, because they'll come back with better ideas. And you ready? They can sell it. Because now that my hairdresser said, you're going to have to quit lying and just let your hair go gray. You're living a lie. And there's so little color left to work with. I don't have anything to work with here. You go bright, screaming red, bronzy color quickly. I just want a little brown hair. She goes, you don't have anything left. Just face reality. Why are you laughing, sir? You're getting close, man. In the back, you can still dye that. In the front, live and let live. I have to face reality. And here's the point. Once you're this gray, people may think you're wise, but they also think you can't work your phone. And that is also true. I've asked my kid about 13 questions about Spotify in the last week after he convinced me to switch from Rhapsody to Spotify. All right, how's this work? I'm the one who suggested it. All right, let me help you. Right? How many of you technical support for your parents? How many of you resent doing technical support for your parents? Ruins every holiday, doesn't it? My brother and I divided up. I'm Thanksgiving, he's Christmas. Because inevitably they're going to take us upstairs to the computer to figure out why it's printing in Portuguese. And so, that's a true story, folks. We cut a deal to navigate all that, but it's better to lead our way through it. And because they can sell it. Somebody else goes, well, I don't know why the old guys like Hayden and Gray, big old barbecue belly and gray hairs, making decisions like they know what's going on. They can't even navigate downloads in Spotify. Do you know that Reddit is the most popular source of news for millennials? And the vast majority of us older folks have never been on it. We don't have any reason to go on it. It looks like the internet in the beginning of the internet. It's like the Wild West of news. Fake news starts there. Starts on Reddit and then spreads from there. It's like, why would I go there? That's the greatest source of news. I've never even heard of Reddit. True. Don't care. Whatever. Well, if somebody else can explain it, that idea gets sold a whole lot better. Does that make sense? How do you set policy when it comes to generational differences? People help. Now, 5 steps. Any of you 5-step people? Step-by-step folks? Linear folks? Look, you could see half this room just sighed. They laid back in their chair and went, I'm going to get 5 steps and a box lunch. I can feel it coming. In the next 25 minutes, I'm going to get 5 steps and a box lunch. And that is a true statement at every step of the way. So let's go. Acknowledge. What we've been doing now for the last hour is just acknowledging, oh, these are generational differences. As Lenora said, we don't acknowledge it because this will be really awkward to bring it up. Mr. Shaw, you're older, and I'm just wondering if you understand how we communicate today. What are you saying? That meetings where everybody reports out on progress could be replaced by a SharePoint site that we pay heavily for as an organization. We would just type up 2 paragraphs. We would put it on the SharePoint site. We would all access that site before the meeting and scan that, and then we could ask each other any questions. And then we wouldn't have to take 25 minutes of highly expensive time and everyone share what they would have written if they didn't live in meeting hell every Tuesday? I'm wondering if I should take the stylus out of my Note 6, because that one didn't blow up, and jam it through my eye when the pressure of these meetings get too bad. Well, that's kind of awkward conversation, isn't it? Mainly because one survey 5 years ago asked people over 30, how long should you work in a place before you criticize something? People over 30 said 2 years. People under 30 said 6 months. That, my friends, is a generational sticking point. Oh, I learned the third time I brought something up that, them's not the rules here. I'm rather forward by questioning things. Well, the answer around that is the next level. Listen, next layer in there. Hey, you've probably been told to be polite and not speak unless spoken to when it comes to criticism. What do you think the first things you'll do when your generation gets in charge of this place? What will you change first? See, they talked about it at lunch. When they get together at lunch, they talk about, here's what we're going to change when they're gone. Philadelphia Magazine had a cover story that said, "Dear baby boomers, please die. We'll take Philadelphia from here. Hugs and kisses, Generation X." And it was interviews with boomers about what boomers do for Philadelphia and what Xers and what they would do with Philadelphia. And it was all tongue in cheek, but a lot of cheek, wasn't it? They talk about, here's what I would change. Why don't you ask? Now, that's one of the ideas. I just filmed Friday night some videos on how to cut turnover, and that's one of the ideas in there. And so acknowledge, we just got to talk about it. Hey, I think this is generational. And a speech like this, or the Sticking Points book, is a great excuse to talk about things. Mike told me, he goes, "Hayden, since you've been here, my wife talks about sticking points all the time." She's like, "That's what explains our 5 kids between 14 and 25. I think they're like this because of that." He's like, "Dude, I'm tired of hearing about your book." It gives us a way to talk about it that's something different than, how old are you, sir? 58. Old man, you suck. Step aside and let a younger man take over. Because that's the other issue. In the last year, I'm hearing more and more, hey, we need to focus on retaining millennials because they're now 35 and younger, and that's the part of the workforce we're drawing from. But every time we talk about strategies to retain millennials, some of our long-term employees, which tend to be boomers, kind of look up and go, "What am I, chopped liver? I'm not valuable anymore?" How do we retain one generation without the marble falling out the other end of the pipe? Right? The only way we can do it is acknowledge it. All right, well, if we never talk about it, then maybe it'll get better. Ever had that happen with a teenager? I think they might be on drugs, but let's not bring it up in case we put the idea in their head. Yeah, parenting mismoves of all time, right? Okay? Appreciate, focus on the why, not the what. I wasn't the first one to say that. That goes to Lauren, the Q&A, wasn't it? Just ask why that makes sense to them. Won't make sense in your country, makes sense in their country. Ubuntu. I see you. I have no idea why you like that music. But I hear it, and I see you, and I'm now curious about it. I don't plan to like it, but I'm curious about it. Does that make sense? Let me recognize you. Let me ask why, not what. Now, let me give you a very practical idea if you're a manager. How many of you have had people come to you complain about another generation? ATD, the Society of Training and Development, they estimated that managers spend 4 hours a day dealing with generational tensions. They quit that organization. That's not what I've observed. I've observed more like a half hour to an hour a day if you added it all up. If you work in an organization where you have 4 hours a day of generational tension, you need to go work in a different organization. That's all my advice, right? But it comes up in enough, and so a lot of times we try to get involved in the middle of it, but we have a generational bias of our own, and we often make it worse. Whoever we agree with, the other person says, well, they just don't get my generation. When actually there are people in their generation going, they're a loser. Isn't that when it gets complicated? You get two millennials, and one of them's like, if they don't do their fair share of the work, I'm done. Well, you know, other people are thinking you're not carrying the load. Your work ethic's bad. Well, who's saying that? You just need to understand that, you know, science says you do better when you start later in the morning and work later. Well, a lot of us are older and melatonin production is way down. And so later in the morning for us is 8:15 because we've been up from 5 every stupid day of the week. We get in at 1, we are still up at 5, laying wide awake going, what has happened to me? It's called melatonin, right? And so, Skippy, just because you can sleep in any bed anywhere, I'm deeply resentful. You better get your butt into this meeting at 9:05. See, sometimes people have different frustrations with each other in the same generation. Do they not? Here's what we say. We stay out of it at first and we say, go find out why that makes sense to them and come back and talk with me and we'll go from there. Teach your folks, coach your folks to ask why. And you ready? They will unclench, they will pout, and then they'll come back to you and say, oh, they think it makes more sense to have earbuds in because we're always chattering over our cubicles. They think boomers talk all the time. That's because chat is the boomer communication. Instant messaging for boomers is chatting. Boomers only had a Chevy. That was their instant messaging device. You could get 6 people in an Impala without seat belts or the middle console. You've seen that 70s show, the opening of that 70s show where they're all sitting in the car singing to the radio. That's why you go to a high school reunion with boomers and they'll have up to 6 close friends. They may have fewer, they won't have more than that because nobody can be a close friend and be in the station wagon facing backwards. You can be close friends with truck drivers, but you can't be close friends with everybody else. Now that's a joke for people over 50. If you're younger, you're like, dude, no idea what all this means. And that's okay, because for people who are younger, they have no idea what nunchuck skills and computer skills and being online looking for hot babes all day Napoleon means. So younger generation, just make yourself a quesadillo and get on with lunch, okay? Just get over it. I try to do some jokes, people stare and go, he's not that funny, okay? Just kind of throw one out to everybody. Focus on the why, not the what, because what's divide. I'll tell you what's wrong with them. The more we focus on what's not good about folks, the worse we are as team leaders. Good team leaders go, ooh, you're irritating and you're irritating, but you're really great at this and this and this. Does that make sense? The more you talk at lunch about what irritates you about the people on your team, the more you'll be irritated by them. And you will not be able to hide that. Your eyebrows do things when you're irritated with people they don't do with other people, and you don't notice it. You're saying ba, 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 and they're hearing, you suck. But you're trying to do your best listening because you went to 3 classes on coaching skills. And you're going, well, how's that make you feel? And they're going, your mouth says you care. Your body stance and your angry eyebrows say, don't say anything else and keep your job. Stop, drop, and roll. What's divide? Why's unite? And if you'll coach the people on your team to do that, it'll make a big difference. Flex. Sometimes when we understand the whys, we're like, okay, we could just do this. Why don't we use SharePoint sites? And why don't we have some time to chat at the beginning of the meeting? Boomer's like, oh, good. Xer's like, no icebreakers, though. We're not going to come up with a fruit that reminds us of our personality. Boomers had whole manuals. You could buy books. Icebreakers A through Z. Icebreakers 2. There were books for managers who were desperate to get people out of the coma position. There were books of icebreakers. Xers came along and said, I'm paying $17 a minute for daycare for my child, and it's going to cost me $112 because we talked about what fruit reminds us of our personality. You're killing me, Smalls.